The world had changed. It wasn't the Earth they once knew, but something far greater, a living, breathing monument to life itself. The alien city at the heart of the Nexus had expanded, spreading its shimmering structures across continents and oceans. Humanity found itself sharing the planet with countless other species, their presence woven into the fabric of everyday life. Some were visible, walking among people in cities and towns, while others existed as echoes, their forms flickering like shadows in the corners of vision. Laura stood on a hill overlooking what used to be Ohio, now transformed into a sprawling landscape of crystal towers and floating gardens. She held a small device in her hand, one of many tools the group had developed to help humanity adapt to this new reality. Since Emily's disappearance into the Nexus, Laura had dedicated herself to studying the changes, working tirelessly to bridge the gap between humans and the alien forces shaping their world. "It's beautiful," Jack said, joining her on the hill. His voice was soft, almost reverent, but it's also overwhelming. Laura nodded. "It's hard to wrap your head around. One day we're just trying to survive, and the next, we're part of something bigger than anyone could have imagined." Daniel approached, holding a tablet filled with data. "We've made progress, though. More people are starting to understand what's happening. They're learning to coexist with each other and with the aliens. But not everyone's happy about it," Jack added, his tone turning bitter. "Some people think we've lost something, that we're no longer in control. That's because we're not," Laura replied gently. "And maybe that's okay. Control isn't always freedom. This connection, this unity, it's what the Nexus was meant to create." Far away, in the heart of the Nexus, Emily remained. She was no longer human in the traditional sense. Her consciousness had merged with the monolith, becoming part of the vast network that connected all life. Yet she was still aware, still Emily. Through the translator, she communicated with those left behind, guiding them through the transition. Her voice became a constant presence, a reassurance that humanity wasn't alone. "We're doing our best," Laura said aloud, as if speaking to Emily. "But it's going to take time." "You'll get there," Emily's voice replied softly, carried by the wind. "Just remember, you're not rebuilding. You're creating something new." Back in the alien city, Daniel worked alongside scientists from other worlds, exchanging knowledge and ideas. Together, they unraveled the mysteries of the Nexus, discovering ways to preserve the memories and cultures of dying civilizations. Each discovery brought them closer to understanding the true purpose of the convergence, not destruction, but preservation. Earth had become a sanctuary, a place where nothing was ever truly lost. Jack spent his days documenting the changes, writing journals and recording videos for future generations. He often wondered what his old self would think of all this, the amateur astronomer who had once dreamed of finding proof of alien life. Now he lived among it every day. As months turned into years, humanity began to adapt. Cities flourished under the glow of alien technology, blending ancient traditions with newfound knowledge. People learned to hear the whispers of the Nexus, to feel the pulse of the Earth beneath their feet. Though challenges remained, there was hope, a shared belief that they were part of something eternal. One evening, as the sun set over the transformed horizon, Laura looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter now, alive with the energy of countless worlds. Somewhere out there, Emily watched too, her essence woven into the cosmos. "We'll be okay," Laura whispered, smiling faintly. "We're more than just survivors. We're builders." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. Earth had become the final resting place of countless alien civilizations, but it was also their legacy, a beacon of hope for all life. Together, humanity and its cosmic companions would forge a future unlike anything the universe had ever seen. The alien city stretched endlessly, its structures shimmering and shifting as if alive. The group moved cautiously, their footsteps silent on the liquid metal ground. Around them, beings of all shapes and sizes went about their tasks, some ignoring the humans entirely, others watching with curiosity. Despite the beauty of the place, an undercurrent of unease lingered in the air. This wasn't just a refuge, it was a crossroads, a place where countless lives and memories intertwined. As they walked, Emily noticed something strange. The translator in her hand had begun to glow faintly again. Its surface warmed to the touch. She stopped, holding it up to examine it closer. "It's reacting to something," she said, her voice low. "Like it's guiding us." "Guiding us where?" Jack asked, glancing around nervously. "This place is huge. We could wander forever." Before Emily could answer, the translator emitted a soft hum and projected a beam of light ahead of them. The beam formed a path, leading toward a towering structure at the center of the city. Its surface was covered in symbols that pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "That has to be it," Daniel said, pointing at the structure. "The heart of the Nexus." The group followed the light, weaving through the alien crowds. As they approached, the structure grew larger, almost impossibly so, its edges blurring as if it existed in multiple dimensions at once. At its base was an entrance, a massive archway filled with swirling energy. "This is it," Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "Whatever happens next, it starts here." Emily stepped forward, clutching the translator tightly. "We have to go inside." One by one, they entered the archway, the energy enveloping them like a warm embrace. On the other side, they found themselves in a vast chamber, its walls lined with glowing panels that displayed scenes from countless worlds. Some showed bustling cities, others desolate wastelands, and still others depicted moments of joy, sorrow, and discovery. It was as if the Nexus was showing them the essence of every civilization that had ever existed. At the center of the chamber stood another monolith, identical to the one on the plateau, but far more intricate. Its symbols spiraled upward, forming a vortex of light that seemed to stretch into infinity. Surrounding it were shadowy figures, representatives of the civilizations that had come before. "You are the chosen," one of the figures said, its voice resonating deeply. "You hold the key to unity." "What do you mean, unity?" Emily asked, stepping closer. "What does Earth have to do with this?" "The Nexus is not just a sanctuary," the figure replied. "It is a bridge, a connection between all life. But for it to function fully, it requires a catalyst, a species willing to carry the weight of memory and guide the cycle." Jack frowned. "So you're saying we're stuck with this job? What if we mess it up?" "You cannot fail," the figure said simply. "The Nexus will ensure balance, but your actions will shape its form. Choose wisely." Before anyone could ask more questions, the monolith began to pulse faster, its light growing brighter. The translator in Emily's hand vibrated violently, pulling her toward the vortex. She resisted at first, but the pull became too strong. "I think I'm supposed to go in," she shouted over the noise. "No," Laura cried, grabbing her arm. "We don't know what's in there." "I have too," Emily replied, tears streaming down her face. "This is why my dad worked so hard. This is why we're here." With a final glance at the group, Emily let go and stepped into the vortex. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, a surge of energy erupted from the monolith, flooding the chamber with blinding light. When it faded, Emily was gone. "What just happened?" Jack demanded, his voice shaking. "Where did she go?" "She's part of the Nexus now," Daniel said quietly, staring at the monolith. "She's the bridge." The remaining group members stood in stunned silence, unsure of what to do next. The chamber felt different, calmer, yet heavier, as if the weight of countless lives now rested on their shoulders. Outside, the alien city hummed softly, its lights flickering in sync with the monolith. "We can't stay here," Laura said finally. "If this is our role now, we need to figure out how to help humanity adapt." Daniel nodded. "And we need to tell the world what's happening. They deserve to know." As they turned to leave, the monolith pulsed one last time, projecting Emily's voice into the chamber. "Don't be afraid," she said, her tone calm and steady. "We're not alone anymore. Together, we'll build something new." Her words echoed in their minds as they stepped back into the alien city, ready to face whatever came next. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they knew one thing for sure: Earth and humanity would never be the same again. The golden glow that bathed the plateaus slowly faded, leaving behind an eerie stillness. The air felt different, lighter, yet charged with a strange energy that made the hairs on their arms stand up. Jack glanced around nervously, his eyes darting to the horizon where faint outlines of alien figures seemed to flicker like mirages. "Do you see that?" he whispered, pointing toward the shapes. Laura squinted, trying to focus. "It's like shadows, but not quite." "Are they real?" "I think they're here," Emily said softly. She held the translator tightly in her hand, its surface now cool and dark. "They've always been here, waiting for this moment." Daniel crouched down, examining the carvings on the ground. The symbols had changed. They were no longer static but seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as if alive. "This place is rewriting itself," he murmured. "Earth isn't just the nexus anymore. It's becoming something else entirely." As they stood there, the whispers returned, soft at first, then growing louder until they filled the air. The voices overlapped, speaking in languages none of them could understand. Yet somehow the meaning came through clearly. "You are the bridge," the voices said, "between past and future, between life and memory." "What does that even mean?" Jack asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "Are we supposed to do something, or just exist here?" Emily closed her eyes, focusing on the sound. "I think it means we're part of it now. Humanity didn't just stumble into this. We were meant to be here, to help guide whatever comes next." Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled again. A low hum built in intensity, resonating deep within their chests. From the center of the plateau, the monolith began to rise, lifting itself off the ground as if weightless. Its glowing symbols spun faster, casting beams of light in every direction. "It's activating again," Laura said, backing away instinctively. "What happens now?" "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice barely audible over the noise. "But I don't think we can stop it." The light from the monolith grew brighter, spreading outward until it engulfed the entire plateau. For a brief moment, everything disappeared: the sky, the mountains, even the group themselves. When the light finally dimmed, they found themselves standing in a completely transformed landscape. The plateau was gone, replaced by a vast, otherworldly plain. The ground shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the colors of countless suns hanging in the sky. Around them, structures materialized: towers made of crystal, spires of shifting light, and bridges that floated unsupported in the air. Alien beings moved among them, some humanoid, others utterly foreign, their forms flickering like projections. This isn't Earth anymore," Jack stammered, his voice trembling. "It's both," Emily corrected him. "Earth has become the nexus, a place where all worlds meet." One of the beings approached them, its form constantly changing, as though it couldn't settle on a single shape. It extended a tendril-like arm, gesturing toward the group. "You carry the essence of humanity," it said, its voice echoing inside their minds. "You will teach, and you will learn." "Teach what?" Laura asked, her tone wary. "We don't even know what's happening." "You will understand in time," the being replied cryptically. "For now, embrace your role." The group exchanged uneasy glances. None of them felt ready for this, whatever this asterisk was. But they also knew there was no turning back. The old Earth was gone, replaced by something far greater and infinitely more complex. As they walked through the alien city, they noticed fragments of their own world woven into the surroundings. A street sign from Ohio, a fragment of the Arizona desert, even the faint smell of coffee from Laura's lab. These remnants reminded them of who they were, even as they stepped further into the unknown. "We're not alone in this," Emily said finally, breaking the silence. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Jack nodded, though his expression remained uneasy. Yeah, but I still don't know if we're saving the world or losing it. In the distance, the hum of the Nexus continued, steady and unrelenting, as if calling out to the stars. And somewhere deep within the structure at the heart of it all, the monolith pulsed softly, its symbols glowing brighter with each passing second. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. And what if Brooks is right? Daniel asked, his voice tight with worry. What if activating it destroys us? Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Emily replied firmly. But sitting here isn't going to save anyone. Reluctantly, the others agreed. Together, they approached the monolith, each of them placing a hand on its surface. The symbols flared brightly, and the hum of energy grew deafening. The portals expanded, merging into a single massive vortex that filled the sky. Suddenly, Brooks grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her away. "You're making a mistake," he shouted. "We can't trust this." "Let go of her," Jack snapped, shoving Brooks aside. Brooks stumbled back, his face red with fury. For a moment, it looked like he might try to stop them again, but instead, he turned and ran toward the edge of the plateau, disappearing into the snow. "He's gone," Laura said, watching him leave. "Good riddance." With Brooks out of the way, the group focused on the task at hand. Emily pressed the translator against the monolith one final time. There was a blinding flash of light, and the vortex roared to life, pulling everything around it into its swirling depths. The ground cracked beneath their feet, and the air felt electric, almost unbearable. Through the chaos, Emily heard the whispers again, the voices of countless beings speaking in unison. "Welcome home," they said softly. And then everything went white. When the light faded, the plateau was silent. The portals were gone, replaced by a soft, golden glow that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. The monolith stood quiet, its symbols dimmed but still visible. What just happened?" Jack asked, looking around. "I think," Emily began, her voice shaky but hopeful. "I think we did it. Earth is the Nexus now." As they stood there, taking in the transformed landscape, none of them noticed the faint outlines of alien figures appearing in the distance, or the realization that humanity's role in this new reality was far from clear. The portals shimmered before them, each one a window into another world. The air was thick with energy, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated faintly, as if the earth itself was alive and breathing. Jack took a cautious step closer to one of the portals, his reflection distorted in its swirling surface. He could see shapes moving on the other side, shapes that looked both familiar and alien at the same time. "We can't just stand here," Laura said, her voice trembling but firm. "If this is the Nexus, we need to figure out how it works. What's pulling all these civilizations together?" Emily nodded, clutching the translator tightly. "My dad thought the Nexus was like a library, a place where knowledge, memories, even life itself could be stored. But if that's true, why now? Why us?" Daniel knelt beside the monolith, running his fingers over its glowing symbols. "Maybe it's not about *Y*. Maybe it's about survival. These civilizations didn't come here by choice. They were dying, and Earth offered them a second chance." Brooks stepped forward, his face tense. "Or maybe it's something worse. What if the Nexus isn't just preserving them? What if it's consuming them?" His words sent a chill through the group. Emily shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. If it were destroying them, why would they keep coming?" "Because they had no other choice," Brooks replied sharply. "When you're facing extinction, you take whatever hope you can find, even if it's false." Before anyone could respond, a low rumble echoed across the plateau. The portals began to shift, their colors deepening and swirling faster. Shadows moved within them, growing larger and more distinct. Then, without warning, one of the portals spat out a figure, a tall humanoid creature with translucent skin and eyes that glowed like embers. The group froze, staring at the being. It didn't move or speak at first, simply observing them with an unreadable expression. Finally, it raised a hand, pointing toward the monolith. "You must complete the cycle," it said, its voice resonant and layered, as if spoken by many voices at once. "What cycle?" Laura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The convergence," the being replied. "It is time for Earth to fulfill its purpose, to become the sanctuary for all life." Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding. What happens to humanity? Will we survive this? The being tilted its head, as if considering the question. "Survival depends on acceptance. Resistance will only bring destruction." Its words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Before anyone could ask more, the being turned and stepped back into the portal, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Well," Jack muttered, breaking the silence. "That wasn't terrifying at all." Laura shot him a glare. "This isn't a joke, Jack. We need to decide what to do next." "We don't have much of a choice," Emily said quietly. She looked at the translator in her hand, then at the monolith. "If the Nexus really is opening, we have to activate it fully. Otherwise, we risk everything falling apart." The group sat in stunned silence, the weight of Brooke's words pressing down on them. Emily clutched the now silent translator, her knuckles white. The room felt different, charged with an energy that made their skin prickle. Outside, the sky had turned a deep, unnatural shade of purple, streaked with veins of golden light. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. "What do we do now?" Jack asked finally, breaking the silence. His voice sounded small, almost lost in the growing tension. "We find the Nexus," Emily replied firmly. Her earlier hesitation was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. "If my dad was right, and I think he was, the Nexus is the key to everything. It's where all these signals are coming from." "But how do we even find it?" Laura asked, rubbing her temples. "It's not like there's a map or GPS for something like this." Daniel flipped through one of Richard Hayes' notebooks, his eyes scanning the pages quickly. "Your dad mentioned coordinates," he said, pointing to a scribbled note in the margin. "They're not exact, but they might lead us somewhere important." Brooks stepped forward, his expression grim. "If you're planning to chase this, you'll need help. And protection. Whatever's happening, it's bigger than any of us." Emily shot him a skeptical look. "And why should we trust you?" "Because I don't want humanity wiped out any more than you do," Brooks replied. "Besides, I know things you don't, like where those coordinates point." He pulled out a tablet and tapped on the screen, bringing up a map. A red dot blinked near the base of Mount Everest. "This is where the signal seems strongest. If the Nexus exists, it's probably there." Jack frowned. "Mount Everest? That's not exactly an easy trip." "It's our only lead," Laura said, standing up. "We can't just sit here and wait for the world to fall apart." Emily nodded. "Then let's go. But we move on our terms, not yours," she added, glaring at Brooks. The next morning, the group boarded a plane bound for Nepal. Brooks insisted on accompanying them, along with 2 of his guards. Emily wasn't happy about it, but she didn't argue. They landed in Kathmandu and hired guides to take them closer to the mountain. The journey was grueling. Steep trails, freezing temperatures, and thin air pushed them to their limits. By the 3rd day, even Jack, who prided himself on his stamina, was struggling to keep up. As they climbed higher, strange things began to happen. Their compasses spun wildly, useless against the magnetic interference. Shadows moved across the snow when no one was there, and faint whispers echoed around them, impossible to ignore. At night, none of them slept well. Dreams of alien landscapes and glowing symbols haunted them, leaving them restless and uneasy. Finally, they'd reached the location marked by the coordinates. It was a vast plateau surrounded by jagged peaks, the ground covered in ancient carvings that matched the symbols they'd been studying. In the center stood a massive stone structure, a monolith etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. "This is it," Emily whispered, stepping forward. She held up the translator, which began to hum softly. The symbols on the monolith lit up in response, glowing brighter with each passing second. "What happens if we activate it?" Daniel asked nervously. "I don't know," Emily admitted, "but I think we're about to find out." Before anyone could stop her, she pressed the translator against the monolith. There was a deafening crack, and a beam of light shot into the sky, piercing the clouds. The ground trembled violently, and the air filled with a chorus of voices, alien, human, and something in between, all speaking at once. Brooks shouted over the noise, "You've done it. The Nexus is opening." Emily turned to him, her face pale but determined. "Then let's hope we're ready." The light grew blinding, swallowing everything in its path. When it faded, the plateau was no longer empty. Portals had opened, swirling with colors beyond description. Through them, glimpses of other worlds flickered, oceans of liquid light, forests of crystal trees, cities floating among the stars. "We're not alone anymore," Laura murmured, staring at the portals in awe. "No," Emily said softly. "We never were." Emily Hayes led Laura, Jack, and Daniel into her small living room, where stacks of dusty files and notebooks covered every surface. She moved a pile of papers off the couch and gestured for them to sit. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened an old wooden box on the coffee table. Inside were faded photographs, handwritten notes, and a small device that looked like a cross between a calculator and a compass. "This was my dad's," Emily said, holding up the device. "He called it a translator. He spent years trying to decode the symbols you've been seeing. He believed they held the key to understanding why Earth keeps attracting alien civilizations." Laura leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the device. "Did he succeed? Did he figure out what the symbols mean?" Emily hesitated, then shook her head. "Not completely. But he left behind some of his work. I think he got close before he vanished." Her voice cracked slightly, and she cleared her throat. "He kept saying something about a cosmic cycle, a pattern that repeats itself over millions of years. He thought Earth wasn't just a random choice for these aliens. It was special." "Special how?" Jack asked, frowning. "I don't know," Emily admitted, "but he mentioned something called the Nexus. He said it was a kind of gateway, a place where all life could connect. He thought Earth might be turning into one." Daniel nodded slowly, flipping through one of the notebooks. "That matches what I've read. The convergence isn't just about preserving dying civilizations. It's about merging them, blending their knowledge, their energy, everything." As they spoke, the translator device in Emily's hand began to hum softly. Startled, she dropped it onto the table. The humming grew louder, and the lights in the room flickered. Outside, the sky darkened unnaturally, even though it was mid-afternoon. "What's happening?" Laura whispered, gripping the edge of the couch. "It's responding," Emily said, her voice trembling. "It's reacting to the same signals as the relics." The group watched in stunned silence as the device projected faint symbols into the air, symbols identical to the ones they had seen before. But this time, the symbols moved faster, swirling together in a spiral that seemed to pulse with energy. Emily reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against the projection. The moment she touched it, a sharp jolt ran through her body, and the room filled with a low, resonant hum. "Emily!" Jack shouted, jumping to his feet. "I'm fine," she gasped, pulling her hand back. But her expression changed as she stared at the symbols. "Wait! I can hear it. It's like voices. They're talking to me." "What are they saying?" Laura asked urgently. Emily closed her eyes, concentrating. "They're warning us. Something big is coming. The Nexus is opening, and when it does, everything will change." Before anyone could respond, The door burst open. Alan Brooks stood there, flanked by 2 armed guards. His face was pale, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. "You need to stop this," he snapped, stepping inside. "You're accelerating the process. We didn't do anything." Laura protested. "This thing started on its own." Brooks ignored her, focusing on Emily. "You're Richard Hayes' daughter, aren't you? You have no idea what you're dealing with. If you keep meddling, you'll doom us all." Emily stood up, clutching the translator tightly. "Doom us? Or doom you asterisk? What are you hiding?" For a moment, Brooks said nothing. Then, reluctantly, he sighed. "We've known about the Nexus for decades. Every time it activates, civilizations collapse. Whole species vanish. We've tried to suppress it, but now it's too late. The convergence is already underway." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Outside, the wind howled louder, and the ground trembled faintly. The translator in Emily's hand glowed brighter, its hum growing almost deafening. "What happens next?" Daniel asked quietly. Brooks met his gaze. "Earth becomes a sanctuary, for better or worse. But humanity might not survive the transition." As if on cue, the translator let out a final, blinding flash of light. When the brightness faded, the device lay silent and dark once more. Emily staggered back, clutching her head. "It's starting," she murmured. "The Nexus, it's opening." No one spoke. They could feel it too, the air thick with energy, the world around them shifting in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Whatever was coming, there was no stopping it now. The days following the incident in the lab were tense and chaotic. News of the glowing disk and its strange behavior spread quickly, despite Alan Brooks' efforts to keep things under wraps. Reports poured in from around the world. Other relics had started reacting too. Museums, archaeological sites, and private collections reported artifacts lighting up, vibrating, or emitting strange sounds. It was as if Earth itself was coming alive, responding to some unseen signal. Laura and Jack tried to piece together what they had witnessed. They spent hours poring over the sketches Laura had made of the symbols projected by the disk. Some of them matched patterns found on ancient carvings, while others seemed entirely new. Jack suggested reaching out to experts who might help decode the message, but Laura hesitated. After their encounter with Brooks, she wasn't sure who to trust. "We need someone outside the system," she said finally. "Someone who won't report back to the government." Jack nodded. "What about that historian you mentioned? The one studying old alien theories?" Laura's eyes lit up. "Daniel Carter. He's been researching this stuff for years. If anyone can make sense of it, it's him." They contacted Daniel through an email address listed on his university profile. Within hours, he responded, eager to help. He agreed to meet them at a quiet cafe in Columbus, far from prying eyes. When they arrived, Daniel was already seated, sipping coffee and flipping through a stack of papers covered in notes. "Thanks for coming," Laura said as they sat down. She explained everything, the disk, the symbols, the global reactions, and showed him her sketches. Daniel studied the drawings carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These aren't random," he said after a moment. "They're part of a language, a very old one. I've seen fragments of it before, mostly in classified documents." "Classified?" Jack asked, leaning forward. "You mean the government knows more than they're letting on?" Daniel nodded grimly. "They've been hiding evidence of alien contact for decades, but there's something else." He paused, lowering his voice. "Some of these symbols talk about an event called the convergence. It happens every few million years when dying civilizations are drawn to Earth like moths to a flame." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. "Dying civilizations? What do you mean?" "They come here to preserve themselves," Daniel explained. "Not just their bodies, but their memories, their knowledge, their essence. Earth becomes a kind of sanctuary, a final resting place." Jack shook his head. That's insane. Why would they all choose Earth? I don't know, Daniel admitted. But if the convergence is happening again, we need to figure out why. And fast. As they spoke, Laura's phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Strange phenomena were escalating worldwide. Auroras danced across skies where they shouldn't appear, and people reported seeing ghostly figures, shadowy forms that vanished when approached. Governments scrambled to contain panic, issuing vague statements about atmospheric disturbances. This isn't just about the relics anymore, Laura said, her voice tight with worry. It's affecting everything. Daniel leaned back, rubbing his temples. There's one person who might know more. Her name's Emily Hayes. Her father worked on decoding these symbols before he disappeared. If anyone has answers, it's her. Laura and Jack exchanged a glance. Where do we find her? Jack asked. She lives in Chicago, Daniel replied. But be careful. She's not exactly fond of strangers asking questions. The next morning, they drove to Chicago, determined to track down Emily Hayes. When they arrived at her address, they found a modest apartment building tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Knocking on her door, they'd braced themselves for rejection. But instead, a young woman answered, her eyes wary but curious. You must be here about my dad, she said before they could introduce themselves. Come in. Inside, Emily's apartment was cluttered with books, papers, and half-finished projects. She gestured for them to sit, then crossed her arms. What do you want? Laura took a deep breath. We think your father's work might hold the key to stopping whatever's happening. Can you help us? Emily hesitated, glancing at the floor. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll try. But if I'm right, it's already too late. Her words hung in the air, heavy with dread. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint sound of whispers, voices no one could explain. Back in Ohio, Laura and Jack worked tirelessly to study the disk they had brought from Arizona. They set it up in a secure lab at the university, surrounding it with sensors and cameras to record any changes. The object remained silent for hours, its surface smooth and dark, almost like polished obsidian. But then, late one night, it began to glow again, this time brighter than before. Laura was the first to notice. She had been reviewing data on her laptop when the soft light caught her eye. Jack, she whispered, pointing at the disk. It's doing something. Jack rushed over, his heart racing. The glowing patterns on the disk shifted and rearranged themselves, forming shapes that looked eerily familiar. They matched the symbols they had seen in the stars and on the smaller shard. But this time, the symbols seemed to pulse in sequence, as if trying to communicate. What do you think it's saying? Jack asked, leaning closer. I don't know, Laura admitted, but it feels like it's trying to tell us something. As they watched, the disk emitted a faint hum, growing louder until it filled the room. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot upward, projecting images onto the ceiling. The images were blurry at first, but they slowly came into focus, showing alien landscapes, strange cities with towering spires, oceans glowing with bioluminescent colors, and skies filled with multiple suns. Are these memories? Jack murmured, his voice trembling. Or recordings, Laura replied, her eyes wide with awe. These could be scenes from other worlds. The projections shifted suddenly, showing glimpses of alien beings. Some were humanoid, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes, while others looked completely foreign. Creatures with shimmering skin or bodies made of swirling energy. Each image lasted only a few seconds before fading into the next. It was overwhelming, like flipping through pages of an ancient cosmic photo album. Then the images stopped, replaced by a series of symbols that floated in midair. Laura grabbed her notebook and began sketching them furiously, hoping to decipher their meaning. As she worked, Jack noticed something strange happening outside. The windows rattled, and the lights flickered. Even the air felt heavier, charged with an unnatural energy. We need to shut it down, Jack said, backing away from the disk. This isn't safe. But Laura hesitated. We can't just turn it off. What if this is our only chance to understand what's going on? Before they could argue further, the lab door burst open. A man in a suit stepped inside, flanked by 2 armed guards. It was Alan Brooks, the same government official who had taken the first shard. His expression was grim as he approached them. "You shouldn't have gone to Arizona," he said, his voice cold. "This isn't a game. You're dealing with forces you don't understand." Laura crossed her arms, glaring at him. "Then explain it to us. What exactly are we dealing with?" Brooks sighed, glancing at the glowing disk. "Those artifacts aren't just pieces of alien technology. They're fragments of something much bigger. A network left behind by countless civilizations that once visited Earth. We believe they used this planet as a kind of refuge, a place to preserve their knowledge and culture before disappearing." Jack frowned. "Disappearing? Where did they go?" "That's the problem," Brooks replied. "We don't know. And now, because of your meddling, the network is activating again. If we can't control it, there's no telling what might happen." As he spoke, the disk's glow intensified, bathing the room in harsh light. The symbols in the air began to spin faster, forming a spiral that pulsed with energy. Laura grabbed Jack's arm, her grip tight. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Brooks turned to his guards. "Get them out of here. Now." But before anyone could move, the spiral exploded into a blinding flash of light. When the brightness faded, the room was eerily silent. The disk lay dormant once more, its surface dark and lifeless. Outside, the wind howled, and the ground trembled faintly. "What just happened?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Brooks didn't answer. He stared at the disk, his face pale. "This is only the beginning," he muttered, "and I'm not sure we're ready for what comes next." Laura exchanged a worried glance with Jack. Whatever they had awakened, it was far beyond anything they could have imagined. The glowing shard lay in the dirt between Jack and Laura, its faint light casting strange shadows on their faces. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. The silence was heavy, broken only by the rustling of leaves overhead and the distant hoot of an owl. Finally, Laura reached out cautiously, her fingers hovering just above the object. "We need to take it back with us," she said, her voice steady but quiet. This could be important." Jack nodded, though his stomach churned with unease. He grabbed a cloth from Laura's backpack and carefully wrapped the shard before slipping it into a small container. As they stood up to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made him glance over his shoulder, but there was nothing there, just trees swaying in the breeze. Back at Laura's office, they set the shard on her desk under a bright lamp. The glow had dimmed slightly, but it still pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Laura snapped photos of the markings and sent them to colleagues around the world, hoping someone might recognize the symbols. Days passed without any answers, but then an email arrived from Dr. Maria Lopez, a linguist specializing in ancient scripts. "These symbols resemble fragments I've seen before," Dr. Lopez wrote. "They appear in carvings found in Peru, Egypt, and even Antarctica. No one knows who made them, but they seem to predate human history." Laura read the message aloud to Jack, her eyes wide with excitement. "If these symbols are showing up all over the planet, maybe we're dealing with something bigger than we thought." Word of their discovery began to spread. News outlets picked up the story, calling it the find of the century. Scientists flocked to Ohio to study the artifact, while conspiracy theorists claimed it was proof of alien life. Governments took notice too. One evening, as Jack and Laura worked late in her office, 2 men in dark suits arrived unannounced. They introduced themselves as agents from the Department of Defense. "We'd like to see the artifact," one of them said flatly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Laura hesitated, glancing at Jack. "Why?" "It's classified," the second agent replied. "But rest assured, we're here to ensure public safety." Jack frowned. Public safety. It's just a rock. The agents didn't respond, but their expressions hardened. Reluctantly, Laura handed over the shard. As soon as it left her hands, the room seemed to grow colder, and the soft hum of electricity that had filled the air since the artifact's arrival abruptly stopped. The agents thanked them curtly and left, carrying the shard in a locked case. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Electronic devices around town malfunctioned. Phones wouldn't turn on, cars refused to start, and streetlights flickered unpredictably. Animals grew restless, barking dogs and screeching birds filling the nights with noise. Even worse, people reported hearing whispers coming from nowhere. At first, everyone assumed it was stress or imagination, but when Jack heard it too, a low, unintelligible murmur, he knew something was wrong. Laura tried contacting the agents, but her calls went unanswered. Frustrated, she decided to investigate further. She remembered reading about other artifacts like the shard buried in various locations worldwide. Using old excavation reports, she identified a site in Arizona where another relic had been discovered decades ago. She convinced Jack to join her on a trip to see if they could uncover more clues. When they arrived at the Arizona site, the landscape was barren and dry, stretching endlessly under the blazing sun. With shovels in hand, they began digging near the spot marked on the map. Hours passed with no luck, and Jack was starting to lose hope. But then his shovel struck something solid. "Got it," he exclaimed, brushing away the dirt. Beneath the surface lay another piece of black material, larger than the shard they'd found earlier. This one was shaped like a disc, its surface covered in intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. As Jack touched it, a sharp jolt ran through his body, and the ground beneath them trembled slightly. "What did you do?" Laura asked, alarmed. "I didn't do anything," Jack stammered, pulling his hand back. "It's reacting to me." Before they could figure out what was happening, the disc began to emit a low hum. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the air until it felt like the entire desert was alive with energy. Then suddenly, the hum stopped, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Laura stared at the disc, her heart pounding. "We need to get this back to the lab. Now." As they packed up their tools, neither of them noticed the faint glow spreading across the horizon, or the shadowy figures watching them from a distance. Jack Monroe adjusted the telescope one last time, his fingers brushing against the cool metal as he peered into the night sky. The stars above Ohio were unusually bright tonight, scattered across the heavens like tiny diamonds on velvet. He had always loved stargazing, ever since he was a boy. It wasn't just about the beauty of the cosmos, it was the mystery. The idea that there was so much out there beyond Earth, waiting to be discovered. As Jack focused the lens, something strange caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a flicker or a smudge on the glass. But when he adjusted the focus again, the pattern remained. It wasn't random. Lines and shapes seemed to connect certain stars, forming symbols that looked deliberate. They weren't constellations he recognized, not anything from astronomy books or star charts. These were different, more intricate, almost like writing. Curiosity burned in Jack's chest. He scribbled down what he saw on a notepad, sketching the patterns as accurately as he could. His hands trembled slightly, though whether from excitement or nerves, he couldn't say. Whatever this was, it felt important. He knew he couldn't figure it out alone. There was only one person he trusted enough to share this with, Laura Bennett. Laura had been his best friend since childhood. While Jack spent his nights gazing at the stars, Laura studied rocks and dirt, working as a geologist at the local university. She had a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of humor, which made her perfect for bouncing ideas off of. Jack grabbed his phone and sent her a quick text. "Got something weird. Can you meet me tomorrow?" The next morning, Jack met Laura at her office. Her desk was cluttered with papers, mineral samples, and half-empty coffee cups. When she saw the sketches, her brow furrowed. "What is this?" she asked, leaning closer. I don't know, Jack admitted. I saw it in the stars last night. Thought maybe you'd recognize it. Laura shook her head but didn't dismiss him outright. Instead, she pulled up a chair and began comparing his drawings to images on her computer. After a few minutes, she froze. Wait a second, she murmured, clicking through files. Finally, she found what she was looking for, a photograph of an ancient artifact unearthed during a dig years ago. The markings on the artifact matched parts of Jack's sketches almost perfectly. Where did this come from? Jack asked, pointing at the screen. It was found near here, Laura said, buried deep underground. No one knows how old it is, but it definitely predates human civilization. Some people think it's alien. Alien, the word hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Jack laughed nervously. You're kidding, right? Laura shrugged. Maybe. But if these symbols are showing up both in the stars and in artifacts buried under our feet, doesn't that seem connected somehow? That afternoon, they decided to visit the site where the artifact had been discovered. It was located in a remote area outside town, surrounded by dense woods. The ground was uneven, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth. As they walked, Laura explained how archaeologists believe the artifact might have been part of a larger structure, something far more complex than anyone had imagined. When they reached the spot, Jack felt a strange tingling sensation in his chest. Something about this place felt wrong. Or maybe not wrong, exactly, but unfamiliar. Alien. He shook his head, trying to clear the thought. We should dig, Laura said suddenly, pulling a small shovel from her backpack. If there's more down there, we need to find it. Jack hesitated. You really think this is a good idea? No, Laura replied with a grin. But when has that ever stopped us? They started digging, their movements slow and careful. After about an hour, Jack's shovel hit something hard. His heart skipped a beat. Together, they brushed away the dirt to reveal another piece of the artifact, a shard of smooth black material etched with the same mysterious symbols. This time, however, the symbols glowed faintly, pulsing with a soft, otherworldly light. What is this thing? Jack whispered, his voice barely audible. Laura didn't answer. She stared at the object, her expression unreadable. For the first time, she looked unsure and a little afraid.